Greetings, students. In this video, I want to talk about another section or part that is very prominent in modern music form, and that is the introduction. Introductions, as you may expect, is the very first thing that you listen when you start listening to a piece of music. Normally, introductions, they give you an idea of what is it that you're going to be listening when you listen to a particular piece of music. It gives you elements that can give you an idea of how the chorus or how the verse or how the whole ambience of the song is going to be, and they can come in different forms. You can make them up in different ways, and I'm going to talk about two of them in this opportunity, and I'm going to show you how to work on one of those ways of making an introduction in this video. So let's get started. Okay, so in modern music form, in the introductions, you have say like I just said, you have several ways of making an introduction. The two most prominent ones that are the ones that you're going to find the most common in the music that you listen to, in pop music, in rock, in blues, in jazz, in rhythm blues. They come in two ways. It could be what we call a build up, or it could be what we call an entirely new section. Okay, let me talk a little about each before I demonstrate how to work at least with one of them here in BandLab. So the build up, let's focus right now on a build up. A build-up normally introduces material that you're going to listen to later in the song. That later can be like a little moment later or a certain time later. But the idea of a build-up is that it introduces to you the elements that are going to be recurrent in your song. Remember that verse and chorus are two parts that they tend to repeat each other several times in music. It isn't like verse and chorus, they sound only once and then the song changes to a completely different thing. Normally, verse and chorus are recurrent. You listen to an alternation of verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus before something else happens in the song. So the introduction, when it comes in the form of a build-up, what it does is to give you an idea or introduce to you what is it that you're going to be listening in either the verse or either the chorus, and even in some opportunities you can listen to music that gives you a mixture between the two of them in the introduction. It all depends on your creativity, it all depends on the artist. But the easier way to understand it is that normally the build up is a form of introduction that features either elements of the verse or elements of the chorus. Now, normally the introductions, and especially the build-ups, they don't they don't extend as much as a verse or as a chorus because they will be taking out protagonism from either of these two parts. So they normally come just half as long as the verse or half as long as the chorus. So think about this. If your verse is 16 bars long, then your build up in the introduction should be 8 bars long. If your verse is only 8 bars long, then your introduction in the form of a build up should be 4 bars long. So normally it's half of the length of the verse or half of the length of the chorus. Okay? A build up, what it is just adding progressively the different instruments that you're going to find in your verse or in your chorus. It depends if your build up in your introduction is going to be about the verse that you're going to listen a few moments afterwards, then you will add progressively the different instruments. That means that at the beginning you will have only, for example, the drums and the bass sounding by themselves. A few bars after that you feature one harmonic instrument, then a few bars after that, once that you have your bass, your drums, and your harmonic instrument, a few bars after that, you feature a melodic instrument, and then finally you feature something else that serves as a cue to start going into the verse. Okay? And normally, these kinds of events, like having only the bass and the drums, and then featuring the next instrument, which will be a harmonic instrument, the space of time that happens between one thing and the other, between one event and the next, normally comes in cycles that are very well defined. Cycles of either 2 bars or 4 bars or 8 bars. It depends on the length of the build-up, depends on the length of the song, on the length of the verse, and consequently the length of the introduction. Okay? And the other way of making an introduction in modern music form will be to compose an entirely new section. In this particular case, then you will feature something that doesn't sound like the verse, doesn't sound like the chorus, but sounds something similar to both of them. It gives you an idea of what the song, the ambience that the song is going to provide. Normally, they're not as long as a build-up. When you have an entirely new section, they tend to be even shorter than a build-up. So if your build-up is half, if a build-up by definition is half as long as a verse or as a chorus, then a new section for an introduction, it will normally be like 1/4 or even smaller than that before the verse starts. Okay, and about this new section, you can have all of the elements can be new. You can have an entirely different drum and bass and harmonic and melodic loops, different from what you have in the verse and the chorus. You can have some of the elements can be new, not all of them. You can have the majority of them can be completely new. It all depends on your creativity, one more time. And just like the build up, right before you transition from your introduction into your verse, then you will have to use what we call a drop. We're going to be talking about what is a drop in a few moments. Okay, so let's get started. Let me show you how is it that you do a build-up. We're going to focus on how to do a build-up to the projects that you already submitted last week. Okay, so I'm going to open mine. This is the written dub project that I had worked on that I showed as an example. I'm going to open it in the digital audio workstation. And here it is. So I want to show you how to do a build up as an introduction right here in this area. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is to zoom out so I can have all of the elements at hand and I can move them around. Okay, remember that by definition, like I said before, if your verse or your chorus, depending on what is it that you're going to base your introduction in, is 16 bars long, like it is the case here, how long do you think then the introduction should be? Think about it for 10 seconds. That's right, it should be 8 bars long. I'm going to base my build up in the verse that I have. As you can see, is 16 bars long, so my introduction should be 8 bars long. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is to move all these elements 8 bars to the right so I can have my 8 bars available at the beginning. So I'm going to you have two options. You can either just select like this, or you can just shift click on each of the elements, on each of the loops that you have, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, and then you can just drag it. Here I'm going to drag it until the beginning of number 9, so I can have here in the at the beginning I have my 8 bars for the introduction. Here you can see it. I'm going to zoom in now. Okay, and there you have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so just like I explained before, the first thing that I want my listeners to listen to is the bass and the drum. Those are the two elements that I'm going to feature from the very beginning in my introduction. Only the drums and the bass. You have two options. You either find again here in the loop browser the same loop and you add it from here from the beginning, or you can just drag it. Since this is going to extend through the verse anyhow, I can just drag it like this until the very beginning. Here I have my drums and here I have my bass. But then I have the following thing to correct it. I have this blank space over here. So I need to extend my loop for 8 more bars. And here is where I'm going to extend it again There it goes. I'm going to do the same with the bass, and there it goes. Okay, great. So I have my bass and my drum from the very beginning in my introduction. The next thing that I'm going to add right after that is the skank, which is my harmonic instrument. Remember what I mentioned at the beginning of the video. You can first start by introducing the drums and the bass, then you can add your harmonic, then add finally your melodic, and then finally work on a drop, which we're going to work on in a little bit. Also remember what I mentioned about cycles. It is important that you respect cycles of either 2 bars or 4 bars or 8 bars, and in some occasions even cycles of 60 bars, 32 bars. Why? Because in music, and this is something that is being done like this forever and ever since humanity has been making music in all of the cultures, we have relied in repetition. Why? Keep in mind that music is a phenomenon that happens in time. If you keep throwing new material and new things to a listener constantly, then after 5 seconds, the listener cannot remember what just happened 5 seconds ago or 10 seconds ago, and that makes your listener lose interest in your song. So this is why musicians, ever since music has existed, we have relied on repetition, and that repetition normally happens every 2 bars or every 4 bars or every 8 bars. When I talk about cycles, it's because every 2 bars or every 8 bars or every 4 bars or so, either something repeats or either something new happens. This is the way that we organize music in a more thorough and deep way than just adding sections like verse, chorus, transition, bridge, interlude, chorus again, outro, and so forth. Okay, so in this case, I am going to add, like I mentioned before, my skank, my Roots and Dub Skank 01, and I'm going to do it. Guess how many bars afterwards? I'm going to make it 4 bars afterwards. Notice that even here in the loops, you can see whoever recorded these loops and made it available for us here in BandLab did it taking into consideration that the cycles that you normally use in music are either 2 bars long. You can see this one in the bass is 2 bars long, is or 4 bars long. You can see it here in the drums is 1, 2, 3, 4 bars long. You see it? So I am going to place my skank here on bar number 5, so I can leave 1, 2, 3, 4 bars of only drums and bass. Then my skank is going to start here on bar number 5. Okay, then what am I going to introduce in bar number 7? Okay, I have 2 bars, 5 and 6. I need something else for 7 and 8 before I start here on number 9, which will be the beginning of my verse. I need to add another element over there to continue the build-up. Build-ups normally look like this. You see that all of the instruments are going to start adding progressively. So what I can do is to add another horn like the ones that I have here at the Roots and Dub horn lead 02. I can add it here on number 7 during 7 and 8. And this is my build-up. You see, this is what a build-up looks like. You have 1 or 2 elements that start, then another one that adds, and then another one that adds until finally you have here all of your elements sounding together. Now, since I want to make a drop, remember that the other condition to make a transition between your introduction and your verse is to add a drop. What is a drop? How do we build a drop? A drop is nothing else but a cue that is going to signify here ends one part, here starts another. That is what a drop is. Normally, they come at the end of a prominent section or a prominent part of your song. So cues like a drop can come at the end of an introduction, for example, after you have several alternations of verse and chorus. For example, after you have verse, chorus, and then repeat the verse, repeat the chorus, and then once again repeat the verse and repeat the chorus. At the very end of that last repetition of the chorus, you can add a drop to signify this is a long section of the song that is ending here and we're going to move into something new. So that is what we're going to do here on bar number 8. Drops can be done in two ways. Most prominently in drops, what you're going to find is either drum fills or effects. What is a drum fill? A drum fill is something that the drummer does in a different part of the drum than what he was playing before. So, for example, if a drummer is normally playing ting ting kang ting 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 kang ting 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 kang, the fill will be when he plays do 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 do. Okay, that is a very rough example, but let me show you. Here in the Loops browser, you actually have drum fields. Okay, here you have root and dub drum field. One, two, three, four, five. You have several of them, and the majority of them, if not all of them, are exactly 1 bar long. So what you can do is just to drop them here on bar number 8, and that will be the perfect transition to bar number 9, which is the beginning of your verse. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose here. Let's see, which one do I like? Okay, I like this one. Roots and dub drum fill number 1. I'm going to drop it here in a new track, and I'm going to make it here at the very beginning of number 8. And there I have it. Another thing that you can add is effects. I don't know if we have any effects here, probably not, because they're not very prominent in roots and dub and in reggae. But in certain other styles, like for example, in trap, in hip hop, in electronic music, in dance music like house or drum and bass, you can find what is called exactly effects, which you can add as well here at the very end of the introduction, and they serve you as a drop into your verse. Okay, now I want to add a new element to my verse to differentiate it even more from this, from the introduction, because since here I have all of the same elements that I'm going to feature here, I do want to give it some variety. This is a pro tip. So I'm going to go again to the loops and look what I found. I hadn't gone as far deep as this before. The other day, as I was exploring this, I found that you have vocals here. Vocals, okay, let's think about this. Do vocals classify as harmonic or as melodic instrument? Take 5 seconds to think about that. That's right, they classify as melodic instruments. So this is what I'm going to do. Here I have it. And since I already have my horns here already, I'm gonna leave them there. And I'm gonna add my vocals one more time here on number 29. And here on number 21, I'm gonna add again the same vocals that I had. And there you go. And then to make the differentiation with the chorus, which is here on number 25, I'm going to find out different vocals that I'm also going to add on 25, but that I'm going to use during the whole chorus. Remember that? What is one of the most prominent difference between verse and chorus? Think about that for 5 seconds. What is the most or one of the most prominent differences between verse and chorus? That is correct. That the chorus normally is more dynamic than the verse, which means that regularly the chorus has more elements happening. So what I'm going to do is to add these other vocals. Number 2 right here, and I'm going to alternate it with number 3. Here it is in number 3. And then I'm going to add number 2 one more time. And number 3 one more time for the end. And there you go. I've made my verse and my chorus even better, and I made a build up here for my introduction. There you have it. Now let's listen to the results of this. And there you have it. All right, so I hope this was instructive and see you next time.